For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Ryan Olestro, and I work at Windbound. And Windbound is a content marketing company, and we, in particular, focus on manufacturers. And we like to think of ourselves as not so much creating content as much as executing a content strategy. So really, while we do produce content, we also want there to be results from our content. A big part of our work is working with marketers to kind of expand their capabilities. We all know content marketing is difficult, so we're kind of like, we're like a whole team of people that can help you take your content marketing to the next level. And that's why Greg chose to sponsor Craft Marketing so that we can continue to educate and spread, great information to marketers around Southern Wisconsin and around the world. So we're super happy to sponsor this, and we're happy everyone has shown up. Enough about us. Let's talk about Chris Hofmann. Chris Hofmann, he is the VP of Digital Services at SeQuel Response, a direct mail and digital response agency based in Minneapolis with offices in Madison. SeQuel Response has been named to the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies and made Minneapolis St. Paul Business Journal's Fast 50 list as one of the fastest growing private companies in the state. He is an alum of the University of Wisconsin and has more than 20 years experience in the marketing business on both the client and the agency side. And I'm happy to say that Windbound works with Chris with several clients, and I've seen his work firsthand, and it's excellent. So I'm really excited to see what he has in store for us. And without too much more, here's Chris.
Well, thanks everybody for joining today for this topic. It's a great topic. It was fun to put this together. I honestly learned a lot. It's something that you're never going to stop learning about, I can guarantee you, if you get into this, because this is a very knotty problem that marketers have been struggling with back in the days when the famous bromide was spoken by, can't remember what his name was, but he talked about being half of his money is half of his advertising budget was wasted. They probably didn't know what half it was. That continues to be a problem today, and that's what marketing attribution attempts to solve. Okay, a little bit about SeQuel, just real quickly. We are, like as Ryan mentioned, a direct mail and digital marketing company. Been around 10 years, and we're a small agency, about 35 people. Main office up in Minneapolis. We do not have that whole building there, I can tell you that. We have a floor of that building, but and then we have our offices down here in Madison as well, where we have our digital practice. But SeQuel works with a lot of direct-to-consumer brands, ones you've heard of like Peloton, Amazon, Amazon Business, FabFitFun, LifeLock. Those are some of the clients that we work with on the direct mail side. And really, a lot of the work that we do is integrating direct mail and digital marketing channels to provide the maximum return on investment on that direct mail spend. So as Ryan said, as myself, just a quick overview there, he pretty much covered it, but been in the marketing business for about 20 years on the client and the agency side, just for about 4.5 years with SeQuel. I actually was a former client of SeQuel when I was director of marketing at WPS Health Insurance here in town, where we were doing a lot of Medicare direct mail and pre-Obamacare individual and family direct mail. And so SeQuel was my agency for doing that. They did a fantastic job. And then I moved on to University of Wisconsin Extension, where I was the director of marketing for their online programs division, and really got that up and running, and then moved to SeQuel when they wanted to get into the digital space. You can see the various certifications that I have from Google, and mainly from Google, and also from Trade Desk, which is a programmatic ad platform. All right, so let's get into this. This is a monster presentation. As I told Tony at the beginning, since we're not going to get kicked out of a room. I had looked at my slide presentation as I saw 80 slides, and I thought, should I cut this down? But you know, we're not going to get kicked out, and this is Zoom. So my KPI is going to be how many people stick with this to the end. So I think we have about 105 or so now. And when I finish this off, I'm going to have Tony do his check, and then that's going to be the KPI. It's going to be our conversion percentage there. So let's get started. So what is attribution? So this definition here is a good one, I think. Attribution is the process of assigning credit to touch points along a consumer's conversion path. So we can see, you know, obviously the touch points are many before someone converts. There's been many studies done. I was just looking at one from Think with Google, and it varies by product. You know, the more expensive a product is, the more touch points they're going to be, the longer the time frame is going to be for that research. So it's a very complicated path here that we're looking at today. And of course, it is the holy grail of marketing because it is about that question of, you know, what part of my advertising budget is really working and what part of it is wasted. And so since the early days of advertising, that's a question that people have wanted to test. And certainly direct mail was one of the first measurable marketing channels and really pioneered the way for kind of the marketing that we're at today. Things like lookalike modeling, which we, you know, as digital marketers associate with Facebook, was really started in that direct mail space. You know, all in the interest of being more efficient with our advertising dollars. And of course, we got the requisite Monty Python gif here, right? The quest for the Holy Grail. But so why is it the Holy Grail? As I said, it helps you understand what works in your marketing mix. It informs an efficient marketing budget allocation, so you can move money to what works and stop spending on what doesn't work. And then it also, as you go through this process of studying your attribution and try to get a better handle, you're going to improve your understanding of your customer journey overall. So, you know, a survey was done. This was done by AdRoll, and you know, looking at how important is attribution, and it's of critical or somewhat important. You know, I think a lot of people who say it's, you know, not important or even somewhat important are probably just frustrated because it's a very difficult problem. It's made more challenging all the time by some of the things we're going to talk about today that are developed in technology. So, you know, as we look at this, it's important to look at attribution in the context of the marketing funnel. So, you know, as we look at that traditional funnel of awareness, consideration, intent, decision, and purchase, there's a lot of ways we could influence that process. We could influence the funnel. You know, and taking a look at it from a digital marketing perspective, we have our prospecting channels. These are just a few examples: display, Facebook, YouTube are ways of getting in front of people. Certainly direct mail are ways of getting in front of new audiences. And now, you know, of course, a lot of people are talking about CTV, OTT. That's the new kind of shiny object in prospecting, as opposed to linear television, where you can get more targeted with your television purchases. But again, raising awareness, gaining some of an initial engagement with your audiences. And then, of course, once people are clicking through, you're building audiences, building retargeting, and basically we're trying to retarget people everywhere across these channels. And ultimately, these channels up here, you know, up the funnel, are assisting what ultimately happens typically as a last interaction in your purchase path, which is, you know, paid search, organic search, or direct. So these are, you know, web channels that you'll see in your Google Analytics that really are responsible for most of the conversions. But of course, if we give those channels 100% credit for the conversions, then we've really missed out, and we're going to be missing a tremendous amount of opportunity to build revenue, to build our audience, to build our customers. And of course, these channels all do work together. And we've seen, you know, you can see here, I mean, WordStream They have huge data sets from all the people on their platform, and they show us here that, as you add additional channels, you see a lift in your branded paid search as people learn about your brand. I mean, even oddly, when you add Bing ads, you see a lift in branded search, but certainly in display and certainly with Facebook as well. So we know this stuff works. Of course, the question is, we want to know how much this works for our own campaigns. And so really that's what attribution seeks to solve and answer that question. So, what's missing from what I've been talking about? I've been showing a lot of digital channels, right? And I have not been talking about all the other channels, all the offline channels that we can be advertising in. Your out of home, print, TV advertising. I did mention direct mail, but these are also part of the marketing mix, and certainly not the only part of the marketing mix. And we want to know how these perform as well. Now, today, my discussion is not going to get into that. There's certainly ways of doing that, and I'll mention them, but that's kind of going to be beyond scope of my presentation today. But certainly we want to know about this. I mean, even these folks. I mean, even the folks that are advertising in front of urinals, they want to know what that ROI is. They want to know that they're getting some return on ad spend from putting those ads in front of people. They certainly have a captive audience. What that's returning, I have no idea, but they want to know before they renew that buy at restaurants around the area. So there are several different methods of doing marketing attribution, obviously, and we're really going to talk about the multi-touch and the experiments. The marketing mix modeling is really what you do if you're spending tens of millions of dollars on multiple channels, and it really kind of is the gold standard. Certainly what the CPG brands are doing, along with other things, but that's again out of the scope of what we're talking about today. So really, our focus is really on that small and medium-sized business, the type of things that they can be doing to get a better understanding of attribution. A great, podcast, I'm sure a lot of you listen to, is Freakonomics. And this is a great one. This is episode 167, 3 hardest words in the English language, which happened to be, I don't know. Stephen Levitt, the economist at University of Chicago, tells the story that he had a major retailer with stores all over the country, and he was consulting with them, and he basically said to them, well, what we need to do is we need to test 40 markets, and we're going to stop advertising for 3 months. We're basically going to do a holdout and see what the delta is on the the in-store sales, and they just wouldn't do it. They said they even had an accidental data point, as you can see this little story here, where somebody in Pittsburgh, somebody had inadvertently not put the ads in the market, and they had some data there, but when he wanted to expand it to get to a statistically significant level with 40 markets, they said, oh no, we can't do that. CO would kill us if we didn't advertise. So it can be scary when you're doing attribution, because you do have to do some things like holdouts, but those are the types of experiments that you can do to prove the incremental value of your marketing spend. So we're not going to talk about media mix modeling. So given that we're not talking about the offline channels and so forth, at least we could accurately attribute all of our digital channels, right? Well, not necessarily. Even that's a challenging problem. And part of the challenge is kind of exhibited right here in the multi-device, multi-browser world that we live in. So here's an example of Bob on his searching on Chrome on his laptop. He clicks on a paid search ad, doesn't purchase. Later uses his iPhone to search, and Safari to search for the product, clicks on the organic result and purchases. And of course, the conversion credit goes to organic search. Google Ad completely loses track of this user, and Google Analytics actually sees these visits as 2 separate users. So there's a great example of the type of breakage that we see that make it an imperfect world for us in attribution. Just, that difference between, using Chrome, having an iPhone, using Safari. And really, I'm here to declare today that the Apple iPhone and Safari are the enemy of marketers. Kind of just kidding, but I mean, honestly, Apple and Safari together are continually doing things to protect the privacy of their users. Apple does not have an advertising business, so they're not invested in that. And so they, in the name of privacy, they are continually making it more difficult for us to track. They're blocking third-party cookies. And so it's making it challenging for us to tie that cross-device attribution and retargeting and a bunch of other things as well. And again, it's one of those things where, you always want to ask the question, if people tell you that, that they are very concerned about their privacy, they don't want to see these ads, and that seems to be a big area of concern. You always want to ask them, the question is, okay, that's fine. Then are you willing to subscribe to Facebook for $10 a month and see how many people say, okay, the ads are going to be fine. So it's an interesting thing, but certainly Apple's not making our lives easier. Luckily, we have Android and we have Chrome that clearly have the dominant market share in the mobile space. So Android, Chrome is up there, and certainly Google is heavily invested in the advertising business, so they wouldn't do anything to harm our ability to do attribution or retargeting. But alas, comes this announcement that Google is going to be phasing out third-party cookies in Chrome. Not right away, but in 2 years. So that has people freaking out. That's that gives you headlines like this in places like Marketing Land, one of our leading advertising and marketing daily newsletters. So very dramatic headlines about the demise and death of cookies and the threat to digital marketing. So it's something we have to be concerned about. And it's actually, there's a lot of action on this. Even this month, and you can see this is a release from August 4th. The ad industry launched the Partnership for Responsible Addressable Media to ensure the future of digital media for businesses and consumers. Now you can see all of the major players that are engaged with this. It's advertising, it's advertising associations, you see the ANA, the IAB, you see huge brands like Unilever, Ford, GM, major, programmatic platforms like the Trade Desk, Media Math. So notably Facebook and Google and Apple are not in there, but so they're really making an effort. And I actually last week, you can probably find the recording, Adweek did a call on this very subject with a couple of guys from the CTO from Trade Desk and the CEO of Trade Desk and some other people from some of the supply side platforms on the programmatic side. And then actually even this month, Jerry Dishler, who's the VP and GM of ads at Google, was on Ad Exchanger Talks, another great podcast I'd recommend people listen to. And what he said on that podcast was, whether this is true or not, who knows, but he said basically the early 2022 deadline is not a firm deadline, and they're not going to proceed if there aren't solutions that work for everyone while also protecting user privacy. So there's definitely some hope there, because this would be a big game changer if Chrome put that limitation on. But hopefully cooler heads will prevail. Certainly, what are called the walled gardens, Google, Facebook, Amazon's also a walled garden. They're going to still be playing and be able to protect themselves. But there's going to be a lot of issues for other players in the digital advertising space for sure. You're going to see this guy's face. You're going to hear me quote him a lot. This is Avinash Kaushik. He's the digital marketing evangelist for Google. He is the author of the Occam's Razor blog. It's a hugely popular and influential analytics blog. He wrote this book, Analytics 2.0, and another book, but they're kind of a Bible of analytics, honestly. And what he has to say about attribution, I thought was great. In his own inimitable way, he says, "Now it's true that with sufficient analytical skills, time, patience, and God's direct blessing to you, it might be possible to do complete multi-channel attribution analysis, where multi-channel includes multiple online channels, behavior of the person across devices, and the impact online and offline. Sadly, that is incredibly hard to do as a whole. And when I say incredibly hard, I mean almost impossible." So this guy is probably about the most knowledgeable guy in attribution, in the world. There's probably others, but it's tough. So, what that really means is, it really does come to the question. So in the quest for the Grail, are we going to be thwarted, very much like the climactic scene in the Holy Grail when they were making the final charge and they were stopped by the bobbies. Okay, I can't see if anybody's smiling, so I don't know if that joke went over well or not, but anyway, I love that movie. All right, so anyway, as you can see, so really what we're talking about, the golden rule of attribution is really, and the mindset is you need to be less wrong over time. That's really what this is all about. You're not going to nail this, but if you continue the quest, you continue working on this, you will be less wrong over time with your attribution. So, seeking attribution, that's what we're really talking about. How do we start to approach attribution? And really, where all discussions of attribution start, they always start with the models, and that's it's actually kind of annoying because it's I've read many articles on attribution, and it talks about the models, and you get kind of excited. It's like, oh yeah, there's great. There's all these models, and they kind of tell you about the models, and then the article kind of ends and says, good luck, use one of these models. So, and here he is again, Avinash Kaushik. I like what he had to say about this. He says, why are there so many models? And it's because the known world is smaller than the unknown world. Very true, very true. So that's why there are these models, and some of these models honestly are, as we'll talk about, are models we certainly don't want to use as the only model. I think all of them have a use, but certainly not as your only model. So here's kind of just a quick, overview of these different models. We've all heard about last click, and I think it's the worst, Jerry, the worst. I mean, it is. Most people know by now that last click attribution is not the way to go. We already showed why, because you're missing so many of the early touch points that are actually assisting on that last click. But it is an analytical frame you can use. We use it for a lot of our clients, but it certainly doesn't inform the whole thing. And then there's first touch, which is, it's great for comparison. And as I'll show you, it's kind of a great way to toggle through some of these attribution models to see the difference between first touch and last touch. And then there's the ones here in the middle. The linear one's kind of a weird one. You give equal credit to every touch point. It's kind of like everybody gets a participation trophy, for being in the path. And then there's these other ones here, which are the U-shaped, the position-based, and the time decay model. And each of those have their merits as well. And then, of course, the thing that people are really talking about a lot now is this, the data-driven attribution. That sounds great. We're all data-driven marketers, so well, yeah, we definitely want to use that, and we do want to use that if we can. I mean, because it's looking at all kinds of signals, time from conversion, device type, the number of ad interactions, the order of ad exposure, and the type of creative assets that were in the path. And so it truly is a dynamic model. It is built into Google Ads, Google Analytics. Actually, it was only in Google Analytics 360, which is $150,000 a year. But it's now in beta in Google Analytics standard. There's a beta attribution where you can access this. So great. It's all about the maths, stuff you're never going to understand, the black box. The only concern is you have to have a very high volume account to leverage the data-driven attribution. So 15,000 clicks on search and a conversion action that has at least 600 conversions within 30 days. So you have to have a lot of conversions. That may be possible. So if you're in that range, it's definitely something you should experiment with. So, at the end of the day, these models, there's two parts to this whole thing with attribution and the accuracy. There's the data, so it's the underlying data that's coming into the model, and then the model that you're using and how that credit is distributed across that model. So that's really what's the two drivers that come together to give you the accuracy of what you're going to get out of that model. So garbage in, garbage out for sure. So little interactivity here. Tony's going to drop a poll out to everybody. We're going to ask what attribution model, if any, are you using right now in your marketing?
That poll is live right now, Chris. Looks like
Yes.
People are seeing it, so that's good.
Awesome. So it's coming in.
Yeah, you're a co-host, so you should be able to see some of this live stuff, right? Good.
Yeah,
good.
absolutely see it.
All right.
See it coming in here. We have a lot of right now in the horse race. Last click and don't know are neck and neck. Data driven, gaining some ground here. Not many people using linear. Not many people using positional. Various others. So, yeah, very interesting. So you got 64% of people voting here. We'll take a look at this at the end. I'm going to kind of minimize this, but right now we're showing 22% with last click, 20% with data driven, and 18% with don't know. So we got some sophisticated people in here. Very cool. All right.
Share the results here, Chris. I just shared the results. Okay. Yep. There we go.
Great. So people can see that, huh?
Everybody thumbs up if you can see the poll results. Okay, good.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one thing I had in here, I think it made the cut, was kind of hybrid too. And that's why I put us in the hybrid bucket. Kind of just depends. We kind of like to look at things a lot of different ways, but awesome. Okay, so let's go on here. So really, oops. Again, back to this ad roll. They did their own survey. First touch, last touch with 58%, multi-touch 34%. This could have been an older survey. The data-driven is a little newer, but only 5% were using an algorithmic or custom at that time. So, again, we're still seeing a lot of people in that first touch, last touch, because again, it is tough because of all the things we talked about, and that's what people default to. So, but I think as a baseline, one of the things that we need to understand is often misunderstood is what is the duopoly? What are the default attribution models that are used in the biggest advertising platforms and in Google Analytics? Because you really need to understand that to get a start on this. So we're going to take a look at what those default attribution models and settings are. So let's start with Google Ads. In Google Ads, when you're setting up your conversions, you are able to select what your attribution model is, and the selection is defaulted to last click. And then there's a couple of other settings here that are kind of interesting. There's the click-through window and your view through conversion window. And the default for the click through window is 30 days and the view through is 1 day. So those are all configurable as well. And so this really applies, the view through conversion window really has to do with display advertising and video. Doesn't apply to search. But basically the click through conversion window means if someone clicks one of your search ads and they convert within 30 days, Google Ads will record a conversion for that click. Because it falls into the 30-day window. So I'm going to jump into I'm going to jump right to an attribution trap, because this is an attribution trap that people need to know about, because it is, I do find that it is pervasive and people get burned on this. So this is a little sidebar here. And it really is, there's a caveat emptor out there. And this is, there's a part of the industry, it's certainly not the whole industry, where you have to be aware. And it's people, if you hear this phrase, clickers aren't converters, that's when you need to raise the caution and be prepared to hear some BS, or at least listen to something with a critical view. And what I'm really talking about here, of course, no presentation would be complete without the MarTech technology landscape from 2020. And what area I'm talking about is I'm talking about the display and programmatic advertising space. And these are all of the companies that occupy this space, very crowded space, a lot of providers and technology platforms in there. And again, not all of them are bad players, and there are a lot of good players in here, but you have to understand where they're operating. And it gets back to this whole idea of these post-click and post-view conversion. So again, post-click conversion, someone clicks on an ad, there's a look-back window, and then they convert. Okay, so that's a post-click conversion. Then there's the post-view conversion, or the also known as a view-through conversion. So this means that they saw, or we'll talk about that. And this is even a misnomer. There's a problem with language. The ad was served to them, and there's a cookie was dropped on their browser or their mobile device or whatever. They did not click the ad, but they converted within a look-back window. Okay, and that look-back window, and this is where the problem is. Those look-back windows are in this programmatic space can be oftentimes 90 days. So that means for a post-view conversion, an ad was served to a user, and that programmatic platform will say a conversion happened if someone converted 89 days later. Okay, so that is improbable, very improbable, and that's an issue. I mean, and this gets into just some misunderstanding about what we're talking about here in this space. And it's just even the definition of impression. That is a bad and much misunderstood term in this space. We had a programmatic ad salesman in our office one time, and I asked him, I said, what's your definition of impression? And he said, when someone sees your ad. That's not true. That's not the case. Here's the definition of impression by the IAB, which is the Interactive Advertising Bureau. It's really the association for the digital advertising industry. And you can see it's a very long definition, but measurement of responses from a web server to a page request from the user browser, which is filtered from robotic activity and error code. So anyway, you can read the whole thing. I'll make this presentation available. It's not when someone viewed the ad. Okay, that's not what the definition of impression. There's a whole other definition out there of viewability. And that definition is if a pixel of the ad showed up, or greater or equal to 50% of the pixel was in an in-focus browser tab for 2 continuous seconds. That's a viewed ad in display advertising. So again, impressions are not views in this space. So just to give you an example here, here's one of our SeQuel retargeting ads on the Washington Post, okay? Digital Marketer's Guide to Integrated Direct Mail. Go out to our website. You can download that for free. You know, when we say impression there, that's an impression. That's an impression that someone's very likely seen. Now, here's an ad that occurs basically at the bottom of the page. That, you know, you scroll below the fold, and you're seeing this. Is that an impression? In the programmatic advertising space, that's absolutely an impression. If you're using the Google Display Network within the Google Ads platform, that is not an impression. So very interesting, important to know that. And I'm not going to get into this, but basically, you know, and I'm going to show an experiment that we did between Google Ads, the Google Display Network, and a very popular programmatic ad platform. But basically, Google Ads, a lot more flexibility in the bidding strategy, including something called vCPM, which is viewable CPM. So all your impressions, if you're bidding on a vCPM basis, are all viewable in Google. So you never pay for an impression that's not viewed. So important to know that. And then lastly, I would say here, now this guy here, this is another one I would write down. If you want to learn a lot about attribution, go out to this guy's website, Himanshu Sharma, Optimize Smart. He's actually a student of Avinash Kaushik's. But as he says here, you know, that in this very complicated world where there's many touch points, he suggests keeping that look back window for display in particular, which he says is a comparatively weak touch point, as short as possible. So if you're going to give credit for view through or post view impressions, you want to keep that look back window very short. All right. So anyway, demand transparency. Here's some things if you're working in that programmatic space, if you're making ad buys there, you know, get these definitions. What does impression mean? What does a conversion mean? What's the look back window? Is that look back window configurable? If they say, no, we can't configure that, it's 90 days, you know, if it's 30 days, walk away from that potential ad buy. All right, so back to the main story here. You know, within these ad platforms, there are tools for doing attribution, right? So within Google Ads itself, I can go in and I can compare various attribution windows. So for example, I can look and compare first click and last click and actually see the change in the number of conversions between first click and last click in terms of a percentage, actually in actual numbers, and then in the cost per conversion. So you can see in this instance, you know, branded search, the branded search campaign, and the non-branded search campaign. The non-branded search campaign, when you look at it from a first click basis, you know, gains 24% more conversions when looked at from a first click perspective. So really that's where a lot of people are discovering your company is on that first touch through a non-branded search term. And it also, so if you're looking at it, you know, from a cost per conversion, you're like, God, you know, my non-branded conversion, you know, cost per conversion is terrible. Well, it's not as bad as you think when you look at it this way. You know, one of the problems here, of course, is that this is only available for the search network and for shopping on Google, does not cover anything outside of those networks. So display, YouTube, you're not going to be able to use this attribution modeling tool within Google Ads. All right, let's talk about Facebook. Facebook's attribution default is 28-day click, 1-day view. And it does use a last touch attribution model. Again, remember, it's not saying last click. So last touch. So that could be a view or a click. Subtle distinction, but can be very important. And the other thing you should note, kind of in the fine print, is that multiple actions count as a click. So it's not necessarily a click that ends up in a landing page view or somebody getting to your site. It could be somebody liking your ad or commenting on your ad. All that counts as a click in this context. So, you know, this is where, if you're running multiple channels, this is where you could start to have some issues with getting an inflated view of your results. So for example, someone clicks your ad and doesn't purchase for 27 days, receives an email and purchases. Well, Facebook, of course, is going to record that as a conversion. So the conversion happened on email, but Facebook's going to take, credit for that unless you have a different attribution model in place. Similarly, if someone sees your ad but doesn't click, but gets to your site in 24 hours, again, Facebook is going to take credit for that conversion. So you can't, it may be, again, the results you're looking at. For example, here's a client that we started working with recently. They were, they were pretty jacked up. I mean, they're looking at their Facebook results and they're like, hey, we've got 403 website purchases. They were doing this themselves because they had started up small business. They got a CPA, cost per result, of under $4. So, hey, we're killing it in this. But then, what you can do just even within your Facebook reporting is look at that attribution window and spread it out, where you can actually see, in this case, of those 403 purchases that happened, 275 of those purchases came from people who never clicked an ad. And 128 of them came from people who had clicked an ad within 28 days. So now, their one-day cost per purchase from a click standpoint was $38, 22 after 7 days and 12 after 28 days. So, that might be good. That might be great for the product you're selling, but Facebook, if you look at the default reports, the default performance report, this is what you're going to see if you don't understand how that attribution window looks. All right. And of course, this view attribution and this, when you're running multiple channels, this is a big source of your CRM and e-commerce discrepancies when you're looking at reports in different platforms and you're not seeing the same thing in your CRM or your e-commerce. So I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but Facebook did, in 2018, they launched Facebook Attribution. And I don't know how many people have actually set this up, but it's actually pretty powerful. We have not done a lot of work on this, but I mean, as I have looked at this more and as I was researching this presentation, I really have a lot of motivation to get this set up and work more with it, because it has a tremendous amount of flexibility, which I'm going to show you here. A lot of different attribution models you can see in there, all the ones we kind of talked about. It has different credit rules, so you could decide what you're going to credit within the platform. One of my favorites is, since we're a digital advertising platform, we like to always prefer the paid touch points. That was going to be my my dig at Greg Michaud, since he's an SEO and content. So no, we would not put that in place. I do not recommend that, but I mean, you can do that. It's there. And then the ability, the attribution window. I mean, you can go back to a 90-day attribution window. So if you've got a much longer sales cycle, you have the flexibility to really drop that back and get a better sense of what's going on. And then the thing that's really impressive is that you have the ability to integrate with, I mean, this is just a partial list here I'm showing you, but you can integrate with pretty much every, all the main platforms. Some platforms are not there. LinkedIn's not there. So there's some that are missing, but you can integrate even to the level of impression level reporting. So you have to put on some impression tags into the mix there, but you can bring impression data into Facebook attribution. So again, it's going to give you a look at where the purchases are coming from, and it's going to give you that attribution across these different channels. So very much it's going to look like Google Analytics in some way, but again, be running off that attribution model, and you'll be bringing all this stuff in. So it's impressive. And then the thing that's, again, a huge advantage of Facebook that they can bring to the table is this cross-device conversion reporting, because of their persistent, deterministic login across devices, right? I mean, we're logged, if you're on Facebook, you're logged in on your mobile device, you're logged in on your, your laptop, you're maybe logged in on a tablet. So Facebook knows who you are, wherever you are, if you're logged in. And that gives us a view into this cross device that's, a lot of people cannot bring. Okay, so let's get to Google Analytics. The standard default reports. The standard default reports in Google Analytics use a last non-direct click attribution. Last non-direct click, you're like, what does that mean? This is a great illustration from Neil Patel. So basically, they're going to give 100% credit to the last analytics channel that was not direct. So in this case, display would get 100% of the credit for a conversion in this multi-touch path here. Direct gets no conversion. And that makes sense. I mean, but maybe at that point, they've had a bunch of touch points. Now they're coming back directly to your site to convert. So I agree. I don't have a problem with non-last direct click in that context if you're going to do that. But that throws some people off sometimes. And it throws some people off because, as we'll talk about here, and this is the great tool free in Google Analytics that a lot of people don't get into, but this is your multi-channel funnels report, and lots of powerful stuff here. And so multi-channel funnels, just at a top level, you can take a look and you could select up the 3 channels and just see the overlap, just very visually. And actually, this is an interactive thing, and you can touch in there and see how much your other channels are interacting on conversions, how they're working together across those channels. And then you've got your this beautiful these conversion paths. Again, think about all the caveats at the beginning of the presentation. We're not getting everything, but the ones that we are getting, we can actually see those multi-touch paths and how those conversions are actually happening. And the other thing you can do here, which is very powerful, is you can bring in that secondary dimension in Google Analytics and dimension this out and really slice and dice this report in different ways, which is very helpful in getting a deeper look into what's actually happening on these paths. So one thing to know about this too is that unlike standard Google Analytics report, multi-channel funnels does correct the direct channel, okay? So that's going to always throw you off a little bit. There is a 2-day lag in multi-channels funnels versus standard reports. But again, you can, very powerful tool here is that model attribution tool. So you can bring in different models and compare your results. So in this case here, I've got a first interaction, last interaction, and a time decay model. And I can see how, paid search in this case on a first interaction basis has 48% more conversions on that first interaction, and on a time decay basis is seen about 20% versus a last interaction. So that's very helpful in terms of understanding that. And again, these are the types of things, particularly if you've got a report where you've got social in here or display, and you are toggling between these models, that could help inform where you should potentially be spending more or reducing your budget when you get to a model that you find is appropriate for your business. Understanding the length of paths in aggregate. So you can see here, the conversions that are happening, the length of those path interactions here. You can see the lag that in time, in days between the first interaction and the conversion as well. So that's helpful. And then of course, there's the assisted conversions report. So you can really take a look and see, what conversions are actually getting an assist somewhere. And then you can actually see in this last column, what conversion, act more as an assist and what act more as a final conversion based on this number here. If you hover over the little question mark, that's what pops up and tells you what that number, that value means. So basically, if it's exceeds 1, it's more of an assist role. So in this case, referral is really doing more assisting than these other channels that are shown. And this is for, if for the geeks out there, this is actually a new beta, report that's available in MCF, multi-channel funnels. And that's the ability to bring in impression-assisted conversions. So before, you could only view, and this is only for GDN, so it's only for the Google Display Network, but before, if you wanted to bring in impression data into those paths, you had to be on Google Analytics 360, $150,000 a year. So now you can tie in, you can connect. It doesn't happen automatically. You have to get the assistance from somebody at Google, but you can tie in your Google Display Network and your analytics and bring this into MCF and see how impressions are affecting conversions. Very powerful, because impressions can be display can be a challenging thing to do attribution for. All right, then here's the really awesome thing about this tool is the ability to create your own custom attribution model. So you can go in there and you can start and you can edit one of the default models, change the credit that you want to give across, first, middle, last interactions. You can change the look back window. You can adjust credit based on user engagement, either page depth or session depth or time on site. And then use other dimensions in here as well. So it's the ability to absolutely create your own custom attribution model in Google Analytics multi-channel funnels. And there's that name again, Avinash Kaushik. He actually, in this blog, you probably have all looked him up. He describes in length the model that he builds, a custom model that he built. And this is actually available on the Google Analytics solutions gallery. So you can just import this for free, and then manipulate it as you will. So very cool aspect of this, very advanced as well. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention direct mail. Again, we do a tremendous amount of direct mail, and we just people don't understand this. They've never heard of matchback attribution, and it's a tremendous advantage that we have in direct mail, is that in that we know who we're mailing to, right? We have the names and addresses of people we're mailing to, and so we do what is kind of a last click attribution, which was called promo code. Did someone contact the brand? Did they call a call center and give a promo code, or did they come into a landing page and put a promo code in? That's kind of a last touch, last click. With Matchback, what we do is we'll get a customer file of newly acquired customers that occurred during the time in which we were mailing, and we'll get it 30 days and 60 days, and then we'll hit those files against each other and see the new customers that actually showed up on the mail file. So again, we're not getting obviously 100% credit for those, but we're getting a partial credit for those conversions, because again, a lot of times today, somebody receiving direct mail, that'll be a catalyst for them to go online and convert, through a branded paid search or a direct visit or organic search or some other channel. All right, have I worn you out? I wonder how many people we have left. We're almost done here. Now we're going to get into some applied attribution, some examples of some things we've done. And really, again, I think that, what I've been showing you here is our tools. These are tools that you can use to help you be less wrong in understanding attribution. And they also are tools that can help you set up experiments for attribution, so you can get even a better understanding of how these channels are working together. So here's an example of a client we are working with, that we took over from another agency. And the problem that they were having is that they just said, hey, we can't get non-branded paid search to work. At the time, they were spending a lot less than this. They've about tripled their spend since we figured this out for them. But at the time, they just branded paid search doesn't work. And because really what they were focused on is last click. They were like, we're getting conversions on last click, and our CPA on last click branded looks great, but non-branded, it's just terrible. It's way beyond what we can do. And so, we did the analysis in analytics, using multi-channel funnels. And what we really understood was that this is a multi-step purchase. And, what you can see is that what happens is really people are getting quotes. And that's where we would need to focus. And we really started focusing on this cost per quote metric, because you can't buy unless you get a quote. And so we have a lot more data optimized around these quotes coming through. And we see these quotes, and then basically the transactions are occurring afterwards, either on branded paid search or on direct or organic. That's where the transactions are occurring. They're just not happening on non-branded paid search. So that analysis, that use of these tools, these attribution tools, allowed us to create do an analysis and create an ad group level target CPA campaign. So we're able to find certain ad groups that had certain keywords. And this is somebody in the specialty insurance space, which had premiums that are really tied to variable premiums. We were able to see that some of these quotes were worth a lot more than we were seeing them being worth on a last click basis. So when we look at that full purchase path, we saw that certain quotes were worth a lot more. And that's what we used that to set our target CPA bids. And that really allowed the revenue to explode and grow from this type of analysis. And of course, to validate this target CPA, there's this, the great feature in Google Ads, the Google Ads experiment. So we ran target CPA versus manual bidding, and we could see the lift very clearly after we ran that experiment with a 50-50 split in Google Ads. All right, another example here is this on Facebook. Obviously Facebook, there's a ton of impressions out there, and we can analyze this through this multi-channel funnels, but we also always like to add holdouts. In this case, this was a negative holdout. We held out certain states, running a lookalike campaign. So a 1% lookalike based on activity on the purchase pixel. And we wanted to see we obviously wanted to see those results, but we wanted to see what happened when we didn't run ads in certain states. And what we were able to see is that when we looked at the states, the holdout states versus the states where we were running Facebook in a year-over-year standpoint, where Facebook was not being run at all, we could see a very significant difference in the revenue, the rate of increase in the revenue, right? So we were seeing a 49% increase in revenue in the states we were running Facebook, and we were actually seeing a bit of a decline where we were not running Facebook. So, it allows us to conclude or to draw the correlation that, hey, running Facebook, serving these impressions is really assisting our overall campaign in terms of increasing that revenue. Now, here's what I talked about before. Here's another test that we ran where we were testing a leading programmatic DSP versus the Google Display Network. Hypothesis here was, these DSPs have all these, their claim is, and this is their selling point. We have more reach. We're going to be on all these different networks. We have all these targeting segments. So, all right, we're going to test this. We're going to test the limited segments, the limited reach we have on Google Display Network head to head against this DSP. So the test design was equal budgets. We did a geographic split by state. We balanced the populations out, identical creative, and we were even going to measure click and view conversions. And then we were going to measure the impact of impressions by viewing the quote and bind. Again, this is insurance, specialty insurance company, a different one. The quote and bind differences between the state sets at the end of the test period, right? So actually looking at their data in these states to see how the quotes and binds played out. So we had those state divisions, we had the population differences, the states we were running in. And the fact of the matter is, we started running this test. We were planning to run this test for 3 months. We aborted the test within 2 weeks, because what we saw, what we saw in our results was that we actually, because one of the conversions we were measuring was a start quote conversion, which is basically just somebody clicking a button to start the quote, as well as actually completing the quote. And so we saw in the first 2 weeks, we saw 29 start quote conversions from GDN, only 1 for the DSP. That was 1 last click and view through conversion. And then we saw, that's actually, and actually that was, we actually saw completed quotes coming through the GDN as well. I don't show it here. It got blocked out somehow. But basically 66 button click conversions and 1 for the DSP. So, it was one of those things. It's a test and learn, doing the attribution. We plan to do the attribution in a much broader way than just a last click. But, 2 weeks in, I could not justify spending this client's money on a test that was clearly going to fail. And so you can see that cost, that cost per conversion number, 36 versus 1,000. So that's another way you can do this. And again, I got some other slides here, the CPC, the CPMs, etc. And then lastly here, another way of doing this is just good old fashioned math. Because again, we want to, this was one where we could not do a holdout. This was really a metro, a DMA type of test. We were running ads in just this DMA. And so one of our analysts proposed a regression analysis, and was able to find that through this regression analysis and the correlation, the negative correlation in terms of reducing the paid search CPL, this is a lead gen campaign, and then doing an R-squared analysis even further to show that there was a fairly significant variation in the paid search CPLs that is explained by the display spend. So, this is, again, you're doing display, you're not seeing conversions. You may not be seeing it in the conversion path, because a lot of this stuff might be happening on phones, iPhones, and so forth. So you bring another analytic frame to the table to find out if your display investment is working. And this is a way of doing that attribution using math. So I end with this. I mean, it's the attribution to, we talked about the Holy Grail. Another guy here from Seer Interactive, a huge digital agency, global digital agency, talks about it as the great white whale of digital analytics effort, but something well worth pursuing. And again, learn to be less wrong over time is really the mindset you have to have. So I wish you good luck and Godspeed. Thank you for sticking out this. I'm, again, interested to see how many people, Tony, we still have who stuck on this thing to the very end. 51.
So we lost some East Coasters. They had to go eat dinner, so they're going to watch this afterwards. But we got 51 hardcore people here. This, frankly, a lot of this stuff's over my head because we work on events and stuff. I'm not selling widgets here, but I bet we have some hardcore people. They're still here. So we invite you to ask some questions and step up. But thanks so much, Chris. That was fantastic. I hope to know just a sliver of any of that someday. So let's open it up for some questions. Go ahead, unmute. Let's have a little discussion here. And we'll let Chris wet his whistle here so he can recover from that.
I have a question.
Andy.
So you had said that the Facebook attribution, I've seen that. I mean, would you see like that arguably Facebook analytics and attribution could be more powerful or a better tool than Google Analytics?
Wow, to say that would be going out on a limb, but I'm seriously, again, them having that deterministic, persistent login. I mean, you should definitely be looking at it, and it's interesting because we have not done a lot of work in that, honestly, because we don't do a ton of Facebook. I mean, Facebook is always kind of a supplemental channel for our clients. I mean, most of our clients are doing our search, and but we definitely have that in the mix. But yeah, I think it's going to become that. Particularly if Chrome goes forward and cuts people off, in a couple of years.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, the more I've looked at Facebook analytics, the more exciting it gets. So, especially from the sophistication of their how people log in, and it's cookie based and that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
It's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, before we go, I know some people were asking, we'll have our recording, of course, but will you be sharing, we do have permission to share your slides out, or is that something
Yes,
you want
will.
to keep?
Yes, you will.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
100%.
More questions, everybody. Chime in.
I was going to ask a question for Chris.
Can't hear you very well, Ryan.
Go ahead and try again, Ryan. We can't hear you very well. Oh, Ryan, you might want to try to dial in. It's a little rough connection there. Sorry. Or type. Yeah, there we go. Let's do that. We have that chat box.
He's muted.
Yeah, he was going to type a question in here. Anybody else,
I'm
if you
sorry.
want to type a question in, or again, feel free to unmute. We're social here. Turn your camera on. Let's have a little discussion here and ask Chris some questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Chris, I saw a question before. Does Facebook count angry or sad responses as clicks? I don't know if that was said.
The documentation says. I mean, if you're reacting, commenting, I mean, I would guess yes. I mean, if you're interacting, it's going to count that as a click.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ryan asks, should companies focus on improving one ad channel before moving on to other ad platforms?
Well, I would say, yes. I mean, I would say that there's a guy who was a UW grad, Jay Friedman, who works for a big programmatic agency, does a lot of writing, and he talks about the marketing pyramid, and really the pyramid being the base. The base of the pyramid is you want to make sure you have all your, particularly for a retailer, you want to have all your online profiles nailed down, your Yelps, your Google My Business, all that kind of stuff. And then you want to have a rock solid website. You want to have your CRM and marketing automation all set. You want to do all those things before you turn on any ads, right? And then you want to go to paid search. If you have a product that people are looking for, then you want to be capturing your fair share of people, that non-branded paid search out there, and get that locked down. And then obviously, on top of that, you're retargeting. So you want to be taking people who have not, converted on a very high quality paid search, session. You want to, retarget those people and convert them. So that's the starting point before you start getting into, more top of funnel channels like Facebook, video, things that are those awareness touch points. So that's kind of the stepwise way of going about it.
Do you guys when a client's doing like a branding campaign, let's say through radio or TV or things like that, kind of having that? I saw a conference called EFF Works Conference, EFF Works Conference in the UK, and they had a lot of case studies where they basically bring in the most successful campaigns across marketing, and they had suggested a 60-40 or a 70-30 split between branding and direct response or sales activation. So when you're looking at clients, Google Analytics and things like that, do you how do you allocate? Because direct response is much easier to measure, right, compared to branding. But branding's still important when you listen to like Seth Godin and things like that too. So how in your opinion, how do you guide a client through that discussion?
You know, we don't have many discussions like that because we're not a branding agency, to be real honest with you. But I mean, it's, I'll tell you, it's interesting. Just today, you know, one of the things that we just did for one of our direct mail clients who just, you know, does a lot. I mean, they're sending out like 1 million pieces a month, 1 million records a month in direct mail. Well, we just did a connected TV. Basically, we took those records, we brought them in through LiveRamp, and matched as many of those people we could through LiveRamp. And this is where we're using a programmatic platform, because you can't do that in Google Display Network. You can't, that's not permitted. It's against the use. So we were able to bring in, onboard these records through LiveRamp, and we created segments for you know, unique segments, again, because we have the records up for display, pre-roll, and CTV. And you know, and 60% of the spend, we put 60% of the spend in connected TV, right? Because that was what the client really wanted to see, was how does connected TV work? And again, you know, the part of this idea is that we're getting in front of these people with an omni-channel campaign while they're receiving direct mail in their home. So they're receiving a tangible piece in their home. At the same time, we're reining in, you know, in some cases we had all channels, CTV, display, pre-roll, all running at once, plus direct mail. And, you know, on the analytics side, when we saw, today I shared this with a client, I did a period over period look. And they had a good, you know, during the time we were running these campaigns, they saw about a 12% increase in their goal conversions, their main goal conversion across the board. But then when I looked at the direct channel, the direct analytics channel, the increase, they had a 45% increase in direct channel conversions. So, you know, when you're talking about something like direct TV in particular, people aren't clicking on direct TV ads, right? So you're not going to get a click, but you may get a direct a visit to the site. We don't have, again, it's a correlation, but when you're looking at these kind of channels, you can look at things like direct, organic. I also looked at their branded paid search, and their branded paid search was up 25% on conversions while we're running this campaign. So that's an example of where you can look, you know, branded, organic, branded, direct channel increases during the time a TV flight is going. And that's a way to give you some insight into how this is impacting a campaign. Now, there's certainly very expensive attribution tools out there that can tie this all together. But those are, you know, tens of thousands of dollars per month. And you know, Analytics 360 is going to be bringing in more and more offline channels. But for those of us that are working in small, medium-sized businesses, that's kind of the poor man's way of looking at it.
Okay, yeah, I'd agree. So,
Chris, this might be more of a general question, either for you or maybe for anybody else still on the call here. Zahir was asking, how can integrated marketing communications be more effective creatively in a pandemic situation for companies? I don't know if you want to take that one, or this might be open panel for everybody.
Well, I would say this. I mean, here's what I would say. I would say that you know, integrated marketing communications, you know, that concept, which of course was the biggest thing in marketing, you know, in the 90s. You know, we probably all of us in marketing probably read that book, or, you know, whatever. But, you know, that was about integrating making sure your messaging was integrated. And certainly that's holds true today. But now it is about, can you focus your campaigns in addressable media and intensify the impact of a campaign? What I just described before is what we call SeQuel surround. if you go to our website, I can guarantee you'll be retargeted by that concept in YouTube. But SeQuel Surround is really, trying to crack that nut and bringing omnichannel to the table with addressable media. And so I would say that, if you know who your audience is, just be very focused, and then do these types of experiments where if possible, where you can do the kinds of holdouts to see lift, against the audience that you've been focused on. That's one answer.